Hi everybody, I'm here with Joelyn, Lutz, and her friend Donna, and we're here in Jerome, Arizona, which is a very old town, much older than they tell us actually. And I'm here with them today to show them why I think this is a very ancient city, where there are very nicely cut and shaped megalithic stones.
And you are?
My name's Gibson, and I'm a researcher, and I have a YouTube channel, Michelle Gibson, and I've just done a lot of work on putting together evidence for this ancient civilization and what appears to be a false historical narrative to cover this up. So they tell us that Jerome came into existence, I believe, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I'd have to find a date on that. It's very clearly very old infrastructure, a lot of ruins here. We are in Jerome, right across the street from the basketball court with the megalithic stones, and we have the same idea going on here with big, gigantic cut and shaped stones down here, and then there's some behind a fenced area here. Joelyn was just pointing that out, but it's all fenced off. Just kind of want to do a swing and take some pictures. And you were pointing out the smaller stones that look like they were just kind of added maybe more recently, possibly. Contrasted with the megalithic stones, there are these walls with smaller stones. I think the smaller stones are also very old, but these kind of look like they might have been thrown together, perhaps more recently. Who really knows? Because, you know, again, Jerome came into existence around the turn of the century, between the 19th and 20th centuries. So that's what they tell us. But again, there's very old things here. So we're at the front of a very old ruined building in Jerome. And this is what they say. Before the Bartlett Hotel, the Grandview Hotel, a wooden structure built in 1895 stood here as the first two-story building in Jerome. It had rooms for dances, dining, and sleeping. In 1898, the structure was destroyed by fire. The Bartlett Hotel was then built of brick in 1901. So they're telling us that this was built in 1901. It had 5 rooms for stores on the sublevel along First Street. The interior was lavish, with each room decorated in a different color. The office of the News, Jerome's longest running newspaper, was in the Bartlett for 20 years. The building also housed the bank, drugstore, offices, and shops. The building became unstable with the slides in the 1930s and was abandoned in the 1940s. The mining company sold portions of it for salvage in the 1950s, removing the entire top floor. Well, so that's what the narrative says, but let's take a look at this place. And as we walk around the building, you'll see more evidence of this, but if you look here on the right-hand side, you see old stone blocks in this part of the building, and you can actually see it on this side. So we're street level here, and then this whole thing goes down below us. And for me, this is classic mud flood evidence. And I'm going to be showing Joelyn and Donna other examples of this as to why when you see this kind of activity going on with the slant and the sublevels and everything else, that it just doesn't make any sense that you would build a building like this originally. And again, I'm not just going to give one example today. I'm going to give as many as I can find, and I know a few off the top of my head. So as we walk around, You know, again, that brickwork there is very old. So this was supposed to have been built in 1901, but you know, you see a lot of cracks going on. Just a really good example of something about the story that doesn't quite fit. And if you just kind of turn around for a moment, Joelyn, and you see the old stone wall across the street. That's all over Jerome. And Jerome also has a reputation of being haunted. They've got the haunted hamburger at the top there, but they do ghost tours and popular place at Halloween and that kind of thing. So we're on the side of the Bartlett Hotel, the so-called Bartlett Hotel. And you know, got the ironwork here. This post has Union Ironworks Los Angeles stamped on it. Again, they wanted to give it a newer feel. But then you get, you know, this old masonry stonework at the base of this building. So if you just turn around, Joelyn, you see more of the beautifully cut and shaped megalithic stones here, just right across the street from where we're standing. It's not natural. But we don't see it because we're not told anything about this, and just think, oh, well, that's just there, or normal, or a boulder, or whatever.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So a lot of people might think those stones came from the quarry. What makes them, in your viewpoint, possibly not?
A couple of reasons. According to the history we have been taught, what technology did we have around the time that this was supposed to have taken place to be able to cut stones like that and bring them here? I mean, we're talking horse and buggy, right? From what we've been told. So, to me, it doesn't add up.
Okay.
And you see, and again, you can verify from your own experience in your own travels. Have you seen that kind of stonework somewhere else?
Okay. Very good.
And where have you seen it personally?
Right. So this is some of it here, right?
I think that's old masonry. Yeah.
Okay. Now you were talking about the stonework and how it's going down. Very clearly, it is angled. Angled. Why? Why angled?
I believe that there was a cataclysmic liquefaction event. Some believe that it was caused by natural cycles. I personally believe it was deliberately caused. And it kind of wiped this original civilization off the face of the earth. And then I believe what we would know as the cabal today, or the controllers, or the deep state, all the big names, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the DuPonts, these families that we know as the wealthiest families, or the 1%, were involved in shovel ready. They came in and they dug out enough infrastructure to restart the civilization and bring us the world that we live in today, motivated by power and control and greed. We had a deep sublevel at the front of this building, but as we go down, we see some floor activity going on here that's not at the same level as that. But we're still going down, down, junky rooms, you know, signs of ruin for a building that's supposedly 120 years old. And then they put this bizarre artwork in here. Great idea. And then somebody really kind of has a twisted thought process going on here. Because that looks kind of torture chamberish to me. The bedtime at the Bartlett Hotel. Yeah. Interesting. That human figure would be a golden body. This is interesting. Let's think about it. A golden body that's being forcibly held back by chains. I know what that tells me.
What does that tell you?
That they're trying to keep us from attaining that state, whether it's that body's kind of off the ground. So is that a light body that's trying to return to source? But I think that, to me, that would be a meaning that I write into that. That is not a happy concept to me. We're standing behind the Holy Family Catholic Church in Jerome, and this is a really interesting place. And Joelyn, I kind of want you to kind of see what's going on up there with that part of the church. There's levels there. It's old stone wall going down towards the fire department, and I've seen fire departments that look just like that in many different places all over the world. And the back of this building has a lot of stuff going on. So you've got the brick in the center, you've got bricked up windows there, and I think that was done on purpose. You've got what looks more like a door than a window in the middle of the building. And then you've got this old stonework down at the bottom. You've got what looks like wood on the right side and the left side, but they're two different styles. Pretty shabby looking, actually. Not really pretty at all.
And your best guess
on
what's going on here?
I'll show you.
Okay.
You know, again, it's not even, and you see this throughout. I just kind of want you to look around behind you. You've got all this subterranean activity going on up here and over here. Pointing out the way that these buildings are situated down here, you know, where you've got on this end this little bit of building that's showing, and then, you know, it's going down here, and then this little bit of building is showing, and it's right next to this wall we're standing on top of, right across from the Holy Family Catholic Church. And I just have a lot of questions as to what's going on here. You know, and like you, I mean, there's just so many different styles going on with this church, and then you've got more doors, you see, that are way above ground level. What's going on there? Those aren't windows. Some of them are windows on the back and up top, but those are doors. We're at the Holy Family Catholic Church, and we're going to go up to the top level here. But you still see the very poor quality covering these older bricks. Oops. I don't feel too bad because the shape of this building is pretty bad where the wood is. And then you got something similar going on behind us here. It's coated. This wall is coated with something. So I can only guess that there's stones underneath there. More of the same. So we're heading up to the top part of this building, and you see that the stairway here that's already shifting, breaking up. When you see more cover up of these stones, you know, look at what you see across the street. We'll see when we get up to the top here. You see those big stones? Just right across the street from here, in this old wall. I wanted to show you the front of the Holy Family Church for a reason. So we came up several flights of steps. You see this same slant going on here with part of the building higher up, so to speak, than the other. And just like we saw down at the Bartlett Hotel. And what I'm finding is that these buildings were part of a frequency resonating and generating system that I think was connected worldwide and was part of the free energy, how it all worked together. And I'm going to show you a place down in Prescott. If you look up here, you don't see a steeple or anything like that at the top. I'm going to show you a similar building in Prescott where it shows that there used to be a steeple and there's not one anymore. And then these windows, the shape of the windows were part of that frequency system. And I've done quite a bit of research on that. But again, and this building is closed. You have to, and if it was open, you'd have to wear a mask to go in there. There's signs there. So I think it's pretty much been shut down since 2020. But again, I mean, this is just you see this evidence everywhere and we accept it as normal, but it just, you know, what's going on here? Because, look at the ancient stonework here in the road. Old stone roads. So you've got more of this below ground activity here. This is the street level, and you've got all of this stuff going down, and there's several levels beneath us of underground building. You know, and again, because we haven't, this is all removed from our awareness, we don't question the narrative because, oh, they must have built this way because it's on a hill or something like that. But again, I'm going to show you more evidence today of why there's something to this.
So Michelle, you were talking about how these streets possibly could have been flooded and the ideas with mud on purpose. And the reason that you're believing this is because they didn't want to know that this could have been level at one time. So if that's the case, why the mud? Why couldn't it just be a flash flood here in Arizona that happens?
Because the evidence of this is in photographs that you can find on the internet. You really have to just search for mud flood, and there's tons of images. And I didn't know about it when I first started doing my own research. I was following cities and places in alignment that I found, and I got a lot of information there. So I got connected with somebody in the mud flood community after I started doing my research, and when I saw what he was looking at, I thought, well, we're looking at the same buildings. And then I started to look into it a little bit, and it made sense to me. And then when I do my research, or when I started to do my research, I would look at specific data points on alignments, and I would see pictures of places that looked like they were covered in mud. So whether it was one event that caused this or a series of events, you can just search for mud flood online and see what pictures come up and decide for yourself if you think that has merit. And I'm just sharing what I've seen in my own local area, about 20 miles from where I live, that to me speaks of this. Point out the Hotel Connor here with the way that it's laid out on the corner. I see examples of that exact same layout in cities all over the world.
And you find
typically they're hotels, but they can be stores or other things.
Just find it odd here in Jerome?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another example that this is a very old city. Okay. So we've toured around Jerome, and this is the last place that I want to show Joelyn and Donna before we head over the mountain to Prescott. And this is the west side of what's called Cleopatra Hill, which when we were down at a lower level, we saw a pyramidal shape with a J on it, and we're just slightly to the west of that right now. And one of the things that I've noticed are mine sites associated with pyramidal shaped buildings or other, or we know them typically as mountains or hills or whatever. But this is one example that I know of personally, but I think there are countless examples of mines that are co-located with what I believe is ancient masonry. And so this isn't a working mine anymore. This area was mined for copper and I believe gold as well, and probably silver. It was a big mine in the late 19th century, early 20th century, like Bisbee, Arizona. A very similar story. And it was a very productive mine. And, you know, I think there was something going on with these precious metals and crystals in the original civilization. And, you know, again, you can do your own search and see what you think, but I'm pretty sure that these mines were in conjunction with very ancient infrastructure.
So Orion comes up, and is there any connection with that? And I noticed another point. I'm going to go this way over these solar panels, but there's another pyramid.
And then there's some over in that direction too.
And then you're pointing over here, back in there, and then we're circling clear around back over to,
and then there's one there.
Cleopatra here. This is known as Cleopatra, which I find interesting.
And all of these are called the Black Hills.
Why?
I think they're telling us something without telling us they're telling us personally. But,
what would that be?
That would be that the original inhabitants of this civilization were melanated.
So a lot of times, Michelle, these things are covered up and they have fences so you can't get into them. This is clearly fenced off. I asked if we could hike a little bit up. And what do you say?
No, and there's a fencing going up Cleopatra Hill over there. They're not going to let you go up there. And there's a lot of public hiking throughout the Verde Valley. Sedona is known for hiking, but not here.
Mm-hmm. So very interesting that they like to keep us out. That we should be questioning. Thank you for taking us here. Woohoo!
You're welcome.
All right.
Hi, we're now in Prescott, Arizona, and this is the Prescott Center for the Arts today. And we're going to do a walk around this building. But before we get started, I want to draw your attention to this land feature behind us, and that's called Thumb Butte. And it's in a nice alignment with this building. And Joelyn, if you can come down this way and kind of pan from there to here, and it appears to be in an alignment with this building, the Butte and the Prescott Center for the Arts. Or in this direction, you have a shape with the P on it, like what we saw back in Jerome with the J on it, with a flat face. And we'll see that more clearly when we go closer to it. So it appears to be an alignment between Thumb Butte, this building with a tower, and that shape with a P on it. That pyramid shape with a P on it. And we saw some places in depth in Jerome, like the Holy Family Catholic Church, and this was said to have been a Catholic church, and also at the Bartlett Hotel. So I want to show you the same phenomena here. We have street level. We have this much of the building showing here on this end, and we've got very old stonework at the base of it. Okay, then you've got the brickwork. It's a pretty fancy brickwork all the way around. So as we walk in this direction, we're going uphill on a slant. We've got this below ground activity going on below street level. As we go up, your older stonework here is getting covered up as we go. So down here you see the ground cover going higher and higher from the bottom row of stones. We're still on the slant. So right here you see this, the bottom layer that we saw here is gone, and now you're seeing the full layer here. So at this part of the building, we only have 2 rows of stones showing of the old stonework. So we're at the front of the building, and we've got a tower here. This is So before this was the Prescott Center for Performing Arts, this was the Sacred Heart Catholic Church and Rectory. And Joelyn, if you can get close to this photo, you can see at one point in time, there was a steeple on the tower. It's not there anymore. So this was said to have been built in Sisters of St. Joseph came to Prescott in 1878. Money was raised for a hospital to be run by the sisters. And by 1881, the hospital had been completed on North Marina Street. In June of 1891, construction was started next door on Sacred Heart Catholic Church. And they gave us who it was designed by and all that stuff. So the first services we're told were held in February of 1895. So what it says is that Sacred Heart Catholic Church is a substantial brick structure in the sober Gothic style. Whatever that, that's the first time I've heard sober Gothic style. Heard of all other kinds. Featuring pointed arches, decorative brickwork, and 2 colors of local rhyolitic tough stone for trim and the foundation. It is one of the best examples of religious architecture in Arizona. Originally, the church had a steeple 115 feet tall. After being struck by lightning several times, it was removed in 1930. So that's what happened to a lot of the original technology on these buildings. You see the buildings today with something missing, and usually a steeple, you know, something along those lines. So they took them down. It's like it was dismantling this free energy system. And I think that's what happened to the church that we saw in Jerome. I think it probably had a steeple like that, but it doesn't have a nice sign like this to tell us that.
Okay.
So let's continue on around the building.
Okay.
So here we are on the other side of the building. You know, you've got your double row rolled stonework here towards the front. And again, we're seeing the slant and more layers of stone underneath the ground level of where we are. So you've actually got a window showing up here, but it's uneven there. More layers of stonework. Doorway over here showing even deeper levels. You've got the bricked up archway here, and you know, something that looks an indentation in the side for some reason. In a lot of places you'll see the same kind of arch, but it's like maybe that much of it showing instead of this much, which is even stranger looking. And then it's those, same thing going on here. It's, you know, kind of getting deeper, and we go back out onto a parking lot. This is the Natural History Museum or Institute in Prescott, and if you look at it again, you have the slant going on. You know, more and more of the lower level being visible, and the building is made out of very large stones. I'm going to say granite stonework of some kind of, clearly a hard kind of stone, you know, like not easy to cut back in the day. But this is just a really interesting looking building here, and just kind of walk this way and see what it looks like at the front. Close above it. Is that granite? Pretty hard.
It sure looks like it to me.
So this beautiful building made of big granite blocks. I don't know the history on it, about it, or the year that it was constructed, but interesting. We're passing by the historic Casa Yampa Inn that was established in Prescott. In 1927. Beautiful brickwork. Fountain in front. decorative pieces around the edges up there at the top, the circular porthole looking designs. But I wanted to point out this tower because you find this type of tower a lot associated with the original infrastructure. Now this one has maybe 2 windows. Sometimes they have 3 clear windows, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. But it's all the same tower. They're usually situated in the same direction. So that's just something I find consistently. And it's beautiful architecture. Gurley Street, which is like one of the main streets in Prescott. And we're going to walk down the street, and I want to point out is the public library, and you see the slant at the top, and the same phenomena that we've been seeing coming up here in Prescott. Same thing as you go down the street. Old architecture, and we're going to go ahead and walk down the street, and I'm going to point out a couple of things. And all the way down you have layers that are covered up. Uneven entrances and doorways. We're still at part of the hotel, or the Hassayampa Inn that I showed you the side of. This is all what this building is here. It's street here, and up at the top here, that's where ground level is, and if you keep going down the street here again, you see that same uneven slant going on where the building's not level to the ground as you go down. We're further down on Gurley Street, and I wanted to share this location that I found the last time I was here. Erected in 1901. Here you've got these beautiful, smooth columns, stone columns on either side. And then here you have pavement lights, or prism lights. Most of these are gone. They used to be everywhere. Apparently they used to be all over the world. I know California had a lot of them back in the day. But for whatever reason, these prism lights are, for the most part, no more. So I found it really interesting to find an example of them here in Prescott. And I think the idea is, Stuff's Beagle, a YouTuber, has done quite a bit of research on these prism lights, and he and I kind of had a joint collaboration a couple of years ago that I've got on my YouTube channel. But they're for underground lighting. So you've got a little bit of something underground showing here. But the idea of the prism lights is that there were underground spaces that needed some kind of lighting. This is like a natural light.
Kind of like our solar skylights?
Yeah, something like that. But they were very cost effective and used to be everywhere. Now not so much. And the question is why. I mean, what's going on with those? Okay. So when my friend and I found those prism lights, we walked a little bit further down, and I found this utility box that had Prescott history on it. Okay, so the courthouse is over here, a big Greco-Roman looking architecture that we take for granted. And again, I don't think it was built when we're told. But you have old Prescott. You know, you have buildings looking like that with the towers, with this rod coming up on the top. those things end up missing, like we talked about the tower that we saw in two Catholic churches. But that would have been part of the energy generating system. And then you also had the streetcar system in Prescott. It was said to have been installed starting in 1905. And the line's first car was old horse-drawn carriage, and then they electrified it. So I think they were, the system was pre-existing, and they used the horse or the mule until they could get electrified. But what's interesting is that once they got it electrified, and this story is repeated everywhere, so it was from 1905 to 1912 that Prescott had its own streetcar system. The arrival of electricity in Prescott was in 1894. And they had this functioning streetcar system for 7 years. Or, is that my math? Let me say it again. 7 years before they stopped. So why put in a streetcar system to only use it for 7 years? And then if you look at this picture here, what's it doing below ground level here? What's going on with that? What does that look like? Are they digging it out? And then you have poles like these that used to be everywhere in historical photos that aren't around anymore. And again, I think that was part of this system. And there's a picture of this electric streetcar system. So what I see is that they used the existing transportation system once they got it running until they had something to replace it, which would have been cars and buses. And then they didn't need it anymore. And they took out the streetcar system. And you can kind of, well, you see something here with the road. This one down here references the Knights of Pythias. The Knights of Pythias were formed in 1864 during the American Civil War by an act of Congress. It was a secret society. And they're given credit for building a lot of orphanages and, widows and orphans' homes and all this other stuff. And things like Pythian castles. And I think that type of architecture was part of the original civilization. And again, it was just kind of giving a reason for coming into being, how they got there. And there's also the Freemasons and the Oddfellows. They're all involved in what's been going on here with reattributing this architecture for different purposes. And they are secret societies. And you see this all over this out-of-the-way town in Arizona, like you do in other places. You see this Greco-Roman architecture style everywhere. The ornate columns and everything else looks like something you'd see in Europe. Just kind of get a good
what was that?
This
Say that again.
Temple here.
By the insignia or the symbol?
So you look at this ornate, so it says Masonic Temple up there at the top. 1907. And this is beautiful stonework. So they're a big part of what's responsible for what we're told today. And I think they were probably the ones that were responsible for maybe digging things out and, making the new slanted roads and making the infrastructure serviceable. If there was in fact a mud flood, which I believe. And so this building is dated to 1907 construction, and they were doing this type of stonework then, is what we're told.
Is granite found easily around here? Is it?
I'm not really sure, but my question would be, how did they do it based on the history that we've been taught? I mean, we can't do this today. And they were doing this in 1907, according to the narrative. I mean, look at the detail here. You've got the roses or the flower, whatever kind of flowers they are. it just really doesn't jive what we're taught in history we were capable of. You know, like we saw back at the utility box. You know, they had supposedly put these tracks in, and this electrified trolley system got in eventually, and then they took it out, and when you had the electrified trolley system, you had horse and buggy. That's what they tell us. That's the contradiction in the narrative. So if we can't do this today, how are they doing it at the turn of the century? Like temple, and we've got like a foundation stone laid by the M.W. Grand Lodge F and A.M. of Arizona, October 19th of AL 5907. So this building has a date of 1907. What calendar is that referring to?
What calendar is that, Michelle?
I don't know. That is interesting. I think we found something to research.